Hey guys, it's Beauty Queen and welcome back to my channel. It is currently 1 o'clock in the morning and I'm up with my daughter, so I thought I would finally film my birth story, like my labour and delivery story, as well as introduce you to Victoriarose. So this is Victoriarose. As I'm filming this, she is 12 days old now. So almost 2 weeks old. And she's massive. So I had been my whole pregnancy preparing for as natural of a birth as possible. Obviously, if anything went wrong, I was fine getting like the epidural or whatever just to cope, but I really wanted to do an all-natural vaginal delivery because that's how I'd always envisioned birthing my first child, was minimal pain relief and all natural. I have nothing against other people who do it differently. It's just something that I really wanted to do to see what my body could do. If you guys are new, because you just stumbled upon my video, at 32 weeks, I was admitted to hospital for preterm labour. I had 2 rounds of steroid shots to develop her lungs, and I was then discharged because while I was still having contractions, I wasn't dilating. So they decided to send me home, and I continued having contractions up until after she was born. This was a very traumatic birth for me and her, but I'm slowly wrapping my head around it. If this video is a little bit all over the place, it's because I'm trying to remember details. It's quite a blur from when I got to the hospital to when she came out. And a lot of the information I have is pieced together from my limited memory, my partner, my mum, and my discharge papers. So, hi. I didn't actually go into labour until 41 weeks exactly. So that was the 31st of July 2021. I was due on the 24th. I woke up and everything was fine. The night before I didn't get much sleep, so on the 30th I didn't get much sleep because throughout my 3rd trimester she decided to sit on one of my nerves, and she used to love moving. Ooh, girl! She used to love like sitting on it, and she wouldn't move off my nerve. So I hadn't had much sleep, but when I got out of bed, I went around my normal morning routine, and then I started getting ready to go do our weekly shop because I was scheduled to be induced on the Wednesday. So Wednesday the 4th of August. Oh, we're hungry. So I was like making sure my shopping list was ready and everything, and then we left the house and I started getting some contractions at about 10 o'clock in the morning, but they felt exactly the same as they had all the other times. You got it? Yeah. So I hadn't really thought much of it, so I just went around the shop doing what I would normally do. And then we came home and my partner unpacked the car and then started gaming. And they were slowly getting more intense, but I wasn't thinking of anything of it. But by 3 p.m, oh my god, they were becoming quite uncomfortable and had started making their way around to my front because they'd been at my back the whole day, which is also why I didn't think much of it, because all the other times that I'd gone to the hospital and they said, yes, like, we think you're starting to go into labour, because that was at 32 weeks and then 36 weeks. They were from my back, moving around to my front. So I didn't think much of them. Silly me. So by 3 p.m. they were saying make their way to my front, and I started hopping into showers to be able to cope. I couldn't actually sit on the couch and get comfortable, because normally I'd sit on the couch when my partner gamed. I couldn't sit on the couch. I was too uncomfortable, so I was just spreading my time evenly between my bed to be comfortable, the shower, and my birthing bowl. And at one point I did track my contractions, and they weren't consistent. They were all over the place, just like all the other times. I think, hold up, I'll check the text I sent to my midwife, because I did give her the information. So they were coming every 4 minutes, and they were lasting about 1:20 each. So I wasn't too concerned, because I had them lasting upwards, up to 2 minutes in the past, and every 2 minutes, and nothing happened. So I just thought it was another false alarm, and just was trying to cope as best as I could. I ate dinner, and I didn't even finish my whole dinner. I started feeling really sick. So I just kind of curled up in bed, and then I just was trying to cope. Got it? At 8 o'clock at night, I was getting really bad, not really bad, but really uncomfortable, and I was just exhausted. So I decided to go to bed. I said goodnight to my partner. Normally would go to bed together, but I was like, nah, it's alright. I put on my podcast that I normally go to bed with to fall asleep, and tried to get comfortable, and my contractions started getting really strong. No, I just couldn't get comfortable, so I hopped in the shower and I was texting my mum, and she was like, I'd message your midwife just to be safe. So I sent my midwife a text, and I hadn't tracked how close my contractions were yet, because every time I was doing it, I was having to focus on when they started and when they stopped, and it just made it really hard for me to cope through them. So I just didn't check again. And my midwife was like, right, I'm going to come in and see you, because I'm pretty sure this is finally labour. So it was a rush to get the car seat in the car, because we decided to do it on the Sunday, so the next day, to put the car seat in the car for the induction on Wednesday. All the other bags were in the car though. So I then sent my mum a text, because she was made food and was going to come in, because I wanted her to be there with me when I had my daughter. So it was a mad rush. I was sitting on the birthing bowl the whole time. It was just crazy. But my midwife arrived at about 10:30 at night, and it was just before she walked through the door that I had gone to toilet and got my bloody show. So I was able to tell her that when she arrived. When she arrived, she observed me for a couple minutes, then wanted to check me. So my partner made the bed with a towel and everything so that she could check me, and I was at 5 centimeters dilated. So we made the plan to call the hospital and arrange for a birthing suite, and then wait for my mum to arrive, and then when my mum arrived, he would leave. So we did that, and there was only one birthing suite left, and it was the only one without a birthing pool. It had a bath, but it didn't have a birthing pool. But you gotta get what you gotta get. So my mum arrived at the house just before midnight, so we all left, 3 cars heading to the hospital. And when we got to the hospital, we got into the room. We had left. Did we leave the bags? I don't remember if we left the bags in the car or not. I actually cannot remember. It was a blur, really. But I was getting, like, the contractions in my back were getting really, really bad. When we first got there, I was sitting on the birthing bowl, leant over the bed, and that wasn't doing anything anymore. Like, that was the only thing that I could cope with at home, but by that stage, like, even that wasn't helping. So my mum ran me a bath, and also by that point, I really didn't care. Like, I was in so much pain, I didn't care what I looked like, so I was just sitting in a sports bra for the rest of my labour. So I was in the bath, and backtrack. When I started feeling sick, when the contractions really started picking up while I was waiting for the midwife to show up, I did start throwing up, and I threw up at home like 3 times, including when my mum first walked through the door. I was over the toilet throwing up. So at the hospital, it was trying to manage pain through the water now, and I was still bleeding from my bloody show, and I was drinking loads of water and throwing up loads. Like, every contraction I was throwing up. I got out the bath, and then they had a shower, and I hopped under the shower to stay warm, and then I went to back to the birthing bowl. And at this point, it was when I decided that I wanted the, I think it's nitrous. It's basically like laughing gas, and you breathe it in through your contraction and exhale it as well. And you just control it. And that was basically the only pain relief I had planned on wanting to use during my labour. So it was about this point that I started getting ready to use it, and there was a lot of issues with getting it hooked up. It was a nightmare, but we did get it working, and I was using breathing techniques as well, and that was, between the two, it was working really well, except you meant to use the gas by breathing in through your contraction. I couldn't concentrate on doing it. I was getting annoyed and frustrated and angry at it. So instead, what I was doing was, because I had 2 different kinds of contractions, big ones and small ones. Big ones I couldn't do anything through. The small ones were easier to get through. But at the end of a contraction, I was breathing it in then, and it would help through the next contraction. And with the small contractions, I could use it, but with the big contractions, there was just no way. And I then decided to hop into the birthing bed because I just couldn't sit on the bottle anymore. My whole body was going weak. It was about this point that I started to bleed a lot more as well. I was losing a lot of blood clots. I was bleeding all over the place, and I just started feeling really cold really fast, and we didn't know what was going on, but we just kept monitoring it. Baby's heart rate seemed to be fine with intermittent monitoring with just a Doppler, so we weren't worried. We were just more concerned about me throwing up so much. So they wanted to put an IV line in to give me anti-nausea pills and IV fluids, because they thought that it was me drinking the water after throwing up that was making me throw up more. But my body has always, with my endometriosis, reacted to pain by throwing up, so, you know. But, like, my midwife got everything ready to put the IV in to do it, but my contractions just ramped up super fast, and I sat there after one and said, there's no way you're going to get it in. I can't sit still. for you to put it in, and I'm terrified of needles, but at that point I didn't care. It was more the fact that I was in so much pain I didn't want to move and it go in wrong, because it was just at this point a continuous contraction that just eased off a little bit and then ramped back up, but it was just continuous, and it felt like my back was breaking. It literally felt like, I think I described it as little box. My spine was little boxes, and with every contraction, it was all the boxes were opening, and it felt like when they opened, it felt like my spine was breaking. So it wasn't very nice. But I got checked 4 hours after the first check. So I think it was like 3 o'clock in the morning I got checked. And it didn't feel like that long at all. And I was 8 centimetres dilated. So, actually it could have been 1 o'clock in the morning. I don't remember what time. But I was 8 centimetres dilated. So I hopped back in. So I asked if I could get more pain relief. Like something more. Like morphine or something. And they told me no, I couldn't, because I was too far dilated that it would cross the placenta and she would have problems breathing because it wouldn't be long until she was here. And I remember it was about this point that I started losing it. I went back in the water for a bit, and I was feeling pretty proud of myself for getting to this point without pain relief or anything, and I was like, I can do this. I turned to my partner in the water. I'm like, I can do this, you know. I've gotten to this point. I can do it. And then, so I was feeling pretty proud of myself, but it was about this point that things started going downhill. I started feeling like it was mid-contraction, and I just remember saying something isn't right, something feels wrong, something's wrong, and apparently it was a mad rush. By this point, I was pretty high from the gas, so I was in and out of, to me it felt like consciousness. All the small contractions I was just basically passed out through, and then I'd just wake up for the big contractions and then go back down. And the only person who was really comforting me at this point was my mum. My partner was trying to help, but it just wasn't working. And when I said this, apparently my midwife and my mum stood up because I'd been bleeding a lot, so they were like asking what's wrong, and I said I don't know, just something doesn't feel right. They kept checking my bleeding and everything, and they couldn't work out what was wrong, so they decided to put me on the monitors to see what was going on. And by this point, they did get an IV into me. They had a consultant come down, and when I was in the bath, they were able to put an IV line in and draw bloods for just in case, because I was starting to get to the point where I felt like I needed something a bit more serious, like an epidural. So they said I had to get bloods drawn before I could get the epidural. And there was a lot of C-sections going on as well. But, okay. So it was going to take a while, so they just wanted to get the bloods done for if I got to that point, and then they could give me IV fluids and all of that good stuff. So they hooked me up to the monitors, and baby's heart rate was, I think it was 145 when they put me on the monitors. So they just left me to contract and see what was going on. And this is where it gets crazy. It starts getting real crazy and leads to the bit that I'm still dealing with. So at this point, I was still real cold, still bleeding lots, and my contractions weren't being picked up on the monitor. I was screaming in pain with the contractions. Like, I was screaming, saying, make it stop, make it stop. Like, I was in so much pain. I felt like my spine was breaking, but the monitor wasn't picking up my contractions. However, it was picking up that she was going into distress. When we were doing the monitoring with the Doppler, it didn't seem like anything was wrong. But when I was hooked up to the monitor, in my discharge papers, there's two different things. So there's one in my discharge papers, and then my mum and my partner both saw the other one. So apparently her heart rate started at 145, and then it decelerated to 100. So her heart rate dropped, and it stayed dropped for 2 minutes, and then she tried correcting it, and when she did that, she overcorrected, and her heart rate went up to 170 something, I think. Hold up, I'll go look at the discharge papers. Yeah, so it went down to 100 for 2 minutes, and then she overcorrected and went up to 170. So they got in. It had been 4 hours, and I was getting checked every 4 hours. So they checked me again, and I was still at 8 centimeters 4 hours later. So the consultant came back in, because obviously her heart rate's dropped and I'm still 8 centimeters, and she checked me again. So my midwife checked me, and then the doctor checked me just to make sure, and sure enough, still at 8 centimeters. And my cervix had actually started like tensing, and was no longer able, like, as good as it was for birth. You okay? And at the start they could feel her head, and at this point they could no longer feel where her head was. They could tell it was in my pelvis, but they couldn't feel like how they could before. And then, so they were starting to worry a bit. And it was at this point that I was like, yes, I need an epidural. I can't keep doing this, because I'd been stuck at 8 centimeters for 4 hours. And had thought, oh yeah, I can do this, because say in another 4 hours I could be pushing her out. But at this point I'm stuck. So they're like, okay, we'll start getting everything ready. And he's in a C-section at the moment, so he'll be a while. You're okay. Oh, I just got spat up on. So she left the room again, and then, apparently her heart rate then went down to 80, and then overcorrected itself and went up to 200. So she was starting to stress out a lot. And then the consultant was called back in to the doctor, and they decided then because she was about to go up for a C-section, but she decided, no, I don't feel safe leaving you to labour like you are. So she talked to me about getting a C-section, and we filled out the paperwork right then and there, just so that it wasn't a definite you're going to get a C-section. It was more of the fact that she wanted her paperwork signed, so that if it came to it in an emergency situation, they could just get me up there straight away without the paperwork. And the whole time I was waiting, from when she left the room after signing the paperwork to when they came back in, I was crying, begging for the epidural, because I just couldn't do it anymore. I was really out of it. I don't remember much of this. This is just what I get told. Oi, no. The cat just tried stealing the pacifier. Dimitri. Okay, whatever. You don't like that one anyway. So I don't remember much. It was kind of a blur. I just remember kept saying, I need the epidural, something's not right. I don't remember her coming back in. Literally the next thing I remember was some people walking into the room and me saying, I need a C-section, I'm sorry, I need a C-section. I was actually apologising for needing a C-section. And from there, it was mad rush. It was getting me pills to neutralise my stomach acid and all that kind of stuff. Getting a gown on me, getting my mum gowned up and my midwife gowned up. I didn't have a bracelet yet, like a hospital ID bracelet, so it was getting that. Finishing up paperwork, all that kind of stuff. It was a mad rush. My mum did come in for the C-section with me instead of my partner, and that was a decision that my partner and my partner made and went to my mum about and then went to me about, and my mum checked with him multiple times to make sure he was okay with that, but he just knew that he couldn't be in there with me because the whole labour from the hospital, like, it was my mum keeping me calm. So he had decided what was best would be for him to wait and then come see us afterwards. And his also reasoning was, if he had major surgery or anything, he would much rather his mum be there and not me, because it's something like that you want your parent there for. So we got rushed up. I did more paperwork up there waiting to be wheeled into theatre, and then I got wheeled into theatre. It's kind of funny. It's not. But for those who followed my journey with my endometriosis, you guys know that in July 2020, I had endometriosis surgery, and I got fully diagnosed with endometriosis then. Well, my surgeon for that has been my care provider for my endometriosis since I was 14, and he actually works for that hospital, and he was on call that night as the surgeon. So he was actually the one to deliver my baby girl. So he was in there. I got given a face mask because I was in so much pain from my contractions. So I was given a face mask with the nitros through it. And I was given a pillow, and I was made to lean over it while just breathing normally. I wish I had the face mask the whole time, but I could only get it to get the epidural, just so I could stay still. Because I was so worried about staying still because I couldn't stay still. There was one point that it hurt to move. But my body was physically moving and making me move, which was making my contractions worse. So that was just trying to keep me still as long as possible. He got it in straight away, and it was off. So we started the process, and for those who haven't had a C-section, it feels strange. You don't feel any pain, you can't feel anything. I know there's cases that you can, rare cases, but I couldn't feel anything. I was completely numb and tingly. Like, they had done it from just under my chest all the way down for the numbing, so I didn't feel anything. But when they start moving things around, it kind of just feels weird, and I didn't know about that. And the anesthesiologist was amazing. He was sitting by my head, and I was holding my mum's hand, and my arms spread out. And he had looked over the curtain, because there was a curtain up so I couldn't see anything, and he had warned me that they were getting to that point and that was going to feel weird, but it shouldn't feel painful. And it wasn't painful, it just felt weird. And I was so thankful, because otherwise I would have freaked out. But I do remember just laying there after that point and feeling them do that, and just remember thinking, why isn't she crying? I didn't know what stage they were up to, but in my mind it had been long enough that they should have been getting her out and that she should be crying by now. This whole time also, my waters never broke. So I'm just laying there, like, dreading it, because I was like, oh my god, like, I was freaking out, but I didn't want to say anything, so I was just laying there freaking out, like, where's her cry? And then she did cry. They finally got her out, and she was crying and screaming, and they lowered the curtain, and she was covered in her own, like, in her first poo. She had just started doing it as they had gotten her out. And apparently, according to my mum, it went everywhere. It was all over her. Apparently went on the surgeon and then on the table and everything while they were trying to clean her up and make sure she was okay. They did tests to make sure that it didn't get into her lungs too seriously, which she passed that, so that it meant that there was nothing wrong, that she was fine to breathe on her own. She was born, wait, where's the paper? Yeah, so she was born at 8:54 a.m. at 41 weeks and 1 day gestation. So I had been labouring for about 23 hours. She was 3,920 grams, which is 8 pounds 10 ounces. My mum did the cutting the cord. It's something that I really wanted my partner to do, but he wasn't in the room, so it was just my mum got to do it. We started doing skin to skin at 9:10, and we started trying to get her to breastfeed at 9:30. I also couldn't hold her because my arms were still out, so it's funny because I chose my midwife because she's a family friend, and the nurse who was working in the operating room was also someone from an old town I used to live in who knew our family. So, like, they were switching in and out, holding her on my chest because I couldn't hold her. I wasn't allowed to move my arms, so they were holding her on, keeping her stable and everything, so I could have skin to skin. Which was real nice. Like, they did that. In the end, where is it? In the end, it just says blood loss 300. I have no idea what that means, but there were 3 vessels in her cord, apparently. I'm just reading off my discharge thing here. So there was all of that, and then we got stitched up, and I came back and then I don't know how, but I was laying there and she was on me, and then my midwife turned and asked if my partner was saying she was saying that my partner was asking when he could see us and was trying to get into see me in the recovery room. I was confused, but I didn't think much of it, and then I found out that he went on my phone and texted my midwife because she had her phone, and took a bunch of photos and videos, which I didn't really want because nothing had gone to plan. But I guess I have them. And he was allowed into recovery, so I was getting stitched up, and then everyone moved me from the operating bed to the recovery bed, and then I was moved to recovery where my partner joined us. I was allowed out of recovery probably like half an hour to an hour later. I don't actually remember how long it took for me to be allowed out of recovery. They just wanted to make sure that I could start getting feeling back, because they were using an ice cube, trying to work out where I could feel the coldness. And I wasn't as low as they wanted it to be, but I was starting to be able to feel the cold, so they allowed me to go out, and I wasn't throwing up anymore. I was moved back into the birthing suite because they didn't have any rooms available yet, and then someone got discharged and I was able to get my own room. We spent I think it was 3 days in the hospital. Yeah, it was 3 days in the hospital, 2 nights. And we were allowed out then to come home. Yeah. So that's my birth story. So a planned natural birth turned emergency C-section. We did find out that she was posterior, which we had gathered would happen because she'd been posterior my whole pregnancy. She had been head down from like 19 weeks, engaged in my pelvis from like 30 weeks, and then but was always laying on my side, so I knew that she was going to be posterior, but she'd also gotten stuck because we think my body was trying to push at 8 centimeters, but nothing's happening obviously, and she had gotten stuck. And instead, normally apparently babies are meant to come out like facing the ground. She was trying to come facing the roof, so she was not breech, but she was in the wrong birthing position, so that wasn't very much fun. But yes, she was 8 pounds 10 ounce, and she was 51 centimeters long and 36.5 around the head. She's a lot bigger than that now though. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm sorry this was such a long video. I do plan to release my next video I do plan to release is the last pregnancy update, as well as then my postpartum update for the first, I think it's like 4 weeks. Don't quote me on that though, I'm pretty sleep deprived. But yes, I don't know how often I'll keep filming. I will try and keep up with my once a week schedule, but there might be some weeks I just don't get a video out. That's just the life. I'm sleeping but barely, so it's just one of those things. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Bye guys.